Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview, as we continue to break down everything from the 7 NFL draft picks in the 2022 NFL Draft, as well as talk about all the latest breaking news for the Steelers. I guess not breaking news, but just the latest news. Joining me, as always, Bryan Davis. What's up, Bryan?
It is great to be here, Jeff, and I'm really disappointed in you because I thought you were ahead of the times and with the times, and you're still going shiesty when you've got a whole new helmet protector that you should be wearing and you're not.
Gosh, yes. If someone buys me, what are those things called? What they have a name? Guardian.
Guardian,
it's like the Guardian something. Someone buys me a Guardian thing, I'll gladly. But I'd have to wear it like Tomlin does. He flipped it inside out and put it on his head. And Mike Tomlin is a vibe. But we're going to talk about that. Dave Schofield, welcome to the show. What's up?
Not too much. I don't even know what we're talking about tonight. I don't really care. I'm here with you guys. Whatever you bring up, let's do it.
We're talking about the inside linebacker position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And why don't we just start off with that? You know, the reason why we're talking about inside linebackers is because the highlighted rookie, if you want to call it that, is Mark Robinson, 7th round pick out of Ole Miss. We all know the story. We know the background. We know how he used to be a running back. They dropped their scholarships. He went to go to another school. They lost their season due to COVID protocols. Then he ends up walking onto Ole Miss, and they take a running back and turn him into a linebacker, and he finds his way all the way to being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quite a story. I mean, I don't want to downplay that story. It's pretty remarkable. But the inside linebacker position in and of itself is very unique, and included with that is some news from this week. The Steelers just wrapped up their 3-day minicamp, and Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, he was openly talking to media members, and he made a very interesting comment. This was translated to us, a secondhand news source, from Dale Lally of DK Pittsburgh Sports, where Dale said, and this came from Austin, the Steelers are considering moving Devin Bush to the other, which is the Buck, correct, Dave? He's moving from the Mike to the Buck linebacker position. I think that's the way it works. I get those two terms mixed up a lot.
Is it Mike or is it Mac?
Mike, Mac, Buck, whatever. He's moving to the Vince Williams role. That's what they're going to try, essentially. I was kind of surprised. He's not that type of linebacker. He does not have that build. But Dave, I'll ask you first, when you saw this, because that kind of slipped through the cracks of your radar. And what did you think about when you heard that?
My first thought was, well, first Jeff was giving me a hard time because it was 3 minutes after his article came out and I hadn't read it yet, apparently. So that was, I really dropped the ball on that one. My daughter was getting braces today. I'm sorry that
no excuse. You have a phone. You're not Dave. You're not the orthodontist. You're not putting the braces on. You're sitting in a waiting room waiting for them to come out. You had your phone.
I was actually handing out business cards. The one lady was talking to me about the Steelers, but honestly, if Miles Jack and Devin Bush are going to be on the field at the same time, one of them's going to have to take on that role. End of story. Either they're not. What are the Steelers going to completely change their defense and have them and just play 2 Mac linebackers, or which in essence might be what they're doing? They might just be changing up a little bit what they're asking them to do. But bottom line is, it's more about your alignment. And then based on that, what they're going to do. If Devin Bush is taking on that role, and they say that Brian Flores has been working the most with the inside linebackers so far, I can't remember who I saw that from. Can any of you guys confirm that?
Yes.
I know someone said that.
I can confirm that.
I just don't remember who it was.
But that was a report out of minicamp, yes.
So if that's the case, that just tells me that might be where he's lining up, but I don't think they're going to ask him to do the exact same things they have in the past, because that's not what the Steelers do. They try to, when they get a player in there, they try to play to their strengths. So they're saying, we think that Devin Bush would be better in that role than Miles Jack, but we're going to kind of adjust things to his strengths. I don't know what to expect from that position this year now, just because they didn't do it exactly the same last year as what they had in years past either. So to me, it's going to probably be even different than last year and different than what we traditionally see from the Steelers.
Bryan, I'll ask you the same question. What are your thoughts when you heard about Devin Bush potentially being on the move?
Brian Flores, he didn't make these comments. Terrell Austin did. I realized that, but he's kind of a wizard and he's good at moving these guys around and playing to strengths. So they obviously see something in him. But I'm ultimately going to give not a Dave answer, but a Jeff answer.
Ooh.
And this is what I think a Jeff answer is. Heck, I don't care.
Is it shiesty? Is it a shiesty answer?
Let me say my punchline, Dave.
Come on. You were ranking up on me.
No, go ahead and say it because I didn't hear it. What is the Jeff answer? I've never heard this before.
Well, I just started it. Heck, I don't care. Just let them tackle somebody and win games.
That's a Jeff answer. It's great.
It literally is. I've said it a million times on my Let's Ride podcast. If you're here for X's and O's talk, I'm the wrong guy. That's not me. I'm not. That's why I called it Mike, Will, Buck, whatever the two terms are. Who cares? Go make a play. That's it. And this is the one thing. I talked about this with Jeremy Betts, on my Let's Ride podcast on Friday. We don't know what this defense is going to look like. And the last time that Terrell Austin was a defensive coordinator was with Cincinnati. And I don't even think you can go back and glean anything from that. It's a completely different system, completely different players. And then you throw in the Flores and you throw in the Tomlin influence and anyone else's influence that might have even a stake in what happens with how the Steelers play on the defensive side of the football. We don't know. So maybe they do move Devin Bush, but maybe Devin Bush, even at that buck position, is doing something that is not your typical 3-4 standard inside linebacker alignment, like Dave mentioned with the alignment aspect of things. So I just thought that was news that we had to bring up. And honestly, it's way early. We're all trying to cling to as many little tidbits as we can, and that was just one of them. But I wanted to ask you all also about the depth at inside linebacker. Because you have Robert Spillane. We kind of know what he is. You have Buddy Johnson. No clue what that kid could be because we didn't see much of him in his rookie year in 2021. You have then these tweeners, we'll call them that, with Miles Killebrew. You have Marcus Allen. And you can even throw Mark Robinson since he's the guy we're focusing on today. Brian, when you think about this depth at inside linebacker, are you kind of like, it's a lot of bodies, but there's not a lot of players? What's your thoughts?
It is a lot of bodies, and I might sound really dumb asking this question, but isn't UG3 still on the team?
He is. I just forgot. I'm sure I forgot other ones too. I literally don't have a list. I'm just naming.
No, I don't think I think others are just nameless gray faces at this point trying to become a name, which they very well could become a name. And let me throw in another guy that could be a possibility. Jannard Avery is kind of Arthur Modish and Motsish. Sorry, not Modish, Motsish.
Is that a good thing? Arthur Motsish?
Arthur Moats was versatile. He played inside, he played outside, and he played quite well when he was in there. You just didn't really want him starting all the time. And Spillane's kind of that guy too, as far as depth. I think if you have a backup linebacker that's Robert Spillane, I think that is phenomenal. If you have a starting linebacker that's Robert Spillane, you're like, oh gosh, they need to get stronger there. But as the next guy in, or as a third guy in the experimentation that could be the Terrell Austin, Brian Flores defense, well, yeah, that could be pretty spectacular. So I really like that there. Jannard Avery might get some reps there. Marcus Allen, Miles Killebrew, we just don't know who they are. But yeah, I think that I really think that they're in a position where they don't have to bring another guy in. They just have to make sure they have the right guys in the right spots. And I think they're kind of in a good spot with the three that they have. You just don't have a Vince Williams. You don't have a James Ferrier at that position. You don't have that kind of guy at that spot where you might have a Miles Jack or a Devin Bush playing out of position.
Dave, do you disagree with anything Brian just said?
Well, he mentioned Vince Williams and, love the Vinny Vici, but you also have to remember with Vince Williams, he got thrown into starting 11 games as a rookie. He wasn't a full-time starter then until year 5.
Right.
So even if you have a Vince Williams, you have a bunch of potential Vince Williams on this squad. To me, I'm looking at inside linebacker a lot like when we talked last week about the defensive line. They've got a lot of potential, Jeff's favorite word, a lot of players there, a lot of guys you're not even sure who could make the roster. They could contribute to special teams, who's going to come through. But do you really have that one guy that's going to step up and be that guy? Well, right now, the Steelers are almost taking it from an approach, like Bryan said, about a Vince Williams, that can we give him enough time to then be that guy? Because you just don't know what you have now. If all it takes is one of those guys to emerge this year, and you're going to be in really good shape. We just have no idea who it could be at this time. I'd love to see Buddy Johnson, but we don't know what to expect from Buddy Johnson, like Jeff said. So you guys have said a lot of things that I completely agree with, but that's how I'm trying to bring it all together. And there's a lot of players, and there's going to be players that we think right now could be a possibility that are not going to make the 53-man roster. It could be a Buddy Johnson or a Mark Robinson or a UG3 or a Marcus Allen, or, out of all those guys, they can't all make it. So it'll be interesting to see how they play when they get to St. Vincent.
All right. I'm going to start with you, Bryan. I'm going to ask you a simple question. Of all the players that we've talked about so far when referring to the inside linebacker position, which one, since you said Arthur Moats-ish, I'm going to continue with that thread. Which one is the most Vince Williams-ish, in your opinion?
For some reason, I think it's Jannard Avery, and I don't even know if he's considered an inside linebacker. So if we're going to go there, I got to say Robert Spillane.
Okay. Dave, what about you? Same question. Which inside linebacker on the depth chart? And it's tough because, you want to say someone like Buddy Johnson, we just don't know. Which player is the most Vince Williams-ish, in your opinion?
The most Vince Williams-ish.
Yes.
It's probably right now would be Spillane, but I think there's some potential to where we could see someone like a Buddy Johnson.
What are your thoughts? We'll go with you, Dave. What are your thoughts about Robert Spillane? Because you think back to his trajectory in his career, and I'm not talking about his time before Pittsburgh, but last season, I think for all intents and purposes, we thought that he had a good chance to grab that starting role when Vince Williams, in my opinion, still did the team dirty and retired the day before training camp, and it left that spot open. And Spillane, he did not play well in the preseason, and it forced their hand into trading for Joe Schobert. What are your thoughts about Robert Spillane heading into 2022, Dave?
Well, you saw a lot from Spillane when he had to fill in. He will probably always be known for that hit on Derrick Henry. But I think the problem was it just might be that's all you get. It might not be that he's someone that is understanding the game better and is going to suddenly improve. To me, another great example of that was Tyler Matakevich. He was what he was, and he got there quickly, but it's not like he was going to be someone that was then going to grow by leaps and bounds to be something better, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of what you have with a Robert Spillane.
Okay. Bryan, what are your thoughts on Spillane heading into 2022?
Let me give you some names, and they're not Steelers. R.J. Reynolds, Gary Varsho, Lee Lacy. I like that fourth outfielder, Lloyd McClendon. And when I think of a guy like Robert Spillane, I think of him as the third inside linebacker or the fourth outfielder. The guy that comes in that is going to start maybe when you need him to start, but not all the time. But he's going to come in as a pinch hitter and be very good for you. So, yeah, I'm talking about 90s Pirates, and I have no problem doing that. But it's speaking to me.
I get it. Now, there's another caveat with the inside linebacker discussion that I want to dive into, and that is the fact that the Steelers at times will use safeties in a linebacker role. And this is where those tweeners, the Killebrews, the Allens, will sometimes, and even the Carl Josephs, will get involved and play at some form of inside linebacker. We've heard a lot this offseason, both from KT Smith, especially from Jeffrey Benedict, about how Terrell Edmunds, with the fact that they have DeMonte KZ, we know Minkah Fitzpatrick is Minkah Fitzpatrick. Do you see the safeties impacting the way the Steelers view the inside linebacker position? Will they have an impact there, Dave? What do you think?
Yeah, it's all in what you're going to do in sub package. I mean, do you have someone that you feel like you're bringing on an extra linebacker, or do you feel like you're bringing on an extra safety? And with some of these guys, I don't think the position designation, there I got it out, next to their name on the roster means anything to them. They're a guy that can do this. And when they want this kind of guy that does they want to put this guy in there to do that. If that makes sense.
If that makes sense. There you go. Bryan, what are your thoughts about the safety somehow impacting the inside linebacker position?
I think it's going to happen a lot. I think when you have a team and some players that have some versatility to them, you're going to move them down like they have. And you mentioned Terrell Edmunds. I'm going to give you a guy that's, yes, he's not on the team. He's a Hall of Famer, but his last season, Troy Polamalu was very much an inside linebacker a good bit of the time. He was playing a lot. Sure, he was a safety, but they were moving him up a good bit into that role. And if you have a guy that can do it, they're going to go ahead and they're not going to leave anybody on the bench. If you can go ahead and put a guy in that can do the job just for that day, they're going to do it.
All right, this is not something I was going to talk about. We're talking about inside linebackers. It got brought up in the live chat, and I was like, you know what? Let's talk about this, because this actually came into my head last week when the Steelers finished up their phase 3, which I guess mandatory minicamp is still a part of an extension of phase 3, but it was their OTA workouts and not their mandatory. It's still the optional part. We'll put it that way. And they had they had some former players show up. And Mel Blount, you could pick Mel Blount out of, I swear, you could give 100,000 people and say, find Mel Blount, and it'd be so easy. Cowboy hat, he's a giant. There he is, right there. Mel Blount was there. There were a bunch of other former players, but there was one also that was a pretty current former player that I saw. It was good to see him. And it's one inside linebacker, Ryan Shazier. And several people have brought his name up in the live chat. I hate to play the what if game, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If Ryan Shazier didn't get hurt in 2017, how would that have completely altered the Steelers from that point on when it came to some of the decisions that were forced to be made since then? Bryan, what do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot of dominoes that would have fell. We're talking about a great tight end that they picked up last year in Pat Freiermuth, and there's no Pat Freiermuth because Noah Fant,
who would have been a. That's exactly my answer, Bryan. You're spot on. Exactly right.
You go back and
then maybe they have Creed Humphrey at center.
Yeah, seriously, you definitely might. One play, it's like anything. Like, you can go back in time, you could Marty McFly it, and one little thing could throw off history. What do they call it? The butterfly effect.
Yeah.
But you really can, because one different draft pick. If a different team takes Dan Marino, you can take the list of Super Bowl winners from 1983 to 2021, and it could be all different. It really, one guy could possibly shake up everything in history if they're on a different team. So if Ryan Shazier is on this team looks a whole lot different. I'm not so certain that we would not be talking about the great Super Bowl team of 2017 if Ryan Shazier plays. Now, I know that could be a reach, but I was listening to Let's Ride the other day. Man, he really, you were talking about the Jacksonville game, Jeff, of 17 in the playoffs. That's a completely different story. They're a higher seed. They might even be the number 2 seed, the number 1 seed that year. If Ryan Shazier plays, everything's different on that defense, and everything's different with this team. Heck, you still might be talking about an aging Le'Veon Bell on this team. You might be talking about an Antonio Brown, how he freaked out as a Steeler. There's so many things that could have happened. And so many things that happened because they had to revamp after that 2017 season, and they had to go in a different direction. And because of that, yes, they moved up to number 10 to get Devin Bush.
Dave, your turn. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, they don't move up to draft Bush. They probably end up with Fant. But then the question is, who else do they get in the second round when they gave up that second round pick? Who else do they get in the third round the following year? Right? Because wasn't a third round pick the next year that they lost? So you add those things into there. You don't have to draft a Devin Bush. Then you're not, then you don't know where you're drafting in all those other ones. Maybe they take an offensive lineman and something happens and they miss a block and Ben Roethlisberger gets knocked out for his career. You could go back to Louisiana Tech in the late 60s. And if Phil Robertson doesn't decide that he'd rather duck hunt than play football, then Terry Bradshaw doesn't get taken number 1 overall by the Steelers in 1970. And who knows how different the franchise is? You just don't know. There's so many what if stories, but you could drive yourself crazy with that. But that Ryan Shazier one, I think that's one, especially because it was something that happened in what I call the information age. Where, with Twitter and social media and everything else, that's one that I think a lot of people will continue to ask, oh man, what if this with Ryan Shazier? I think it's always going to be a question. And, the Steelers could have been way better, or they could have had different draft picks and completely blown them and never, and Mike Tomlin might not have his, 500 season record intact. It'll drive you mad.
It happened so recent too. This isn't 1970. Yeah, you're right about the 1970 with Bradshaw. That's not incorrect, and this was 2017. That wasn't that long ago, and the ripple effect is still very real with the Steelers. And you do have to ask yourself in 2017. My gosh, they got they got Sean Spence. Didn't they get him off the couch and use him at inside linebacker? They were grasping for straws at that point. And Dave.
Well, the other thing is who's not on the team, because then, Shazier was going into his 5th year option. If he gets that deal, then that changes things with the salary cap, which Jeff still thinks doesn't exist. But then it might have to change moves the Steelers make. But then again, then you're paying a 20th overall draft pick rather than a 10th overall draft pick. There's a lot that could change there.
Yeah. Bryan, anything to add to that?
No, it's just the ultimate butterfly effect. Really, that's Shazier.
But wouldn't we love to see it? Wouldn't that be a great variant? I don't know if you guys ever watched the Loki show. I know Jeff didn't, but if Bryan ever did, wouldn't that be a great variant timeline to watch?
Oh, I'd love to know
of Ryan Shazier still playing. I would.
Well, it was an injury too. It wasn't a decision. It was an injury. Yeah. So this wasn't let's go back in 2004 and what if Cleveland doesn't take Kellen Winslow Jr., they take Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah. That was a decision. They made the wrong choice. Yeah. This was something completely different. So it's a shame. I just wanted to bring that up because it was great to see Ryan Shazier back in Pittsburgh at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. You can always tell that he has a great rapport with the organization and with Mike Tomlin. And I really kind of got sad when they interviewed him, and it was brief. And they asked him about Stephon Tuitt retiring, and I was like, man.
They were the same draft.
Yeah.
I know.
It really does kind of.
That's a what-if draft. It really is.
Goodness gracious. But okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that. It's kind of sad. So still let's go to some news that happened during minicamp. I'm not going to talk on everything. If you want to hear everything that I feel like was important to talk about that you might not have heard about, listen to my Let's Ride podcast Friday morning on the audio side. I spent the entire first half on that. But I want to ask you all, everyone made a big deal, and they've been making a big deal all offseason about this, especially since OTA started, the quarterback rotation. Now, Matt Canada spoke with the media for the first time, and he said, we have been told, in other words, Mike Tomlin told them that the order is Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, and then if there's any snaps left, Chris Oladokun. I did not expect anything different. There were some fans on social media that did. They were kind of upset. Bryan, when you heard that, what were your thoughts?
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen too, because you still give that respect to that veteran that is Mason Rudolph. that is still here. You give him that respect. And the way they're set up by picking up a guy like Trubisky, and even though they drafted a number 1 pick in Kenny Pickett, you still want to follow through and see what you have in the free agent pickup and see what you have in the veteran. And you know that Pickett's going to get his chances, but you're not making a decision on Pickett. You're making more of a decision on a Trubisky and a Rudolph.
Dave, what about you when you saw the rotation?
Honestly, I wouldn't have been shocked if it would have been Rudolph, Trubisky, then Pickett. That just because of being with the team last year, not because he's the guy that they think will be the guy. And honestly, I think people would have made less of a deal about it if it was Rudolph, because I think they would have been like, oh, they're just going in based on, familiarity. But, Rudolph gets Mitch slapped and he's back to number 2. And sorry, I couldn't help it. And I'm really not shocked by it at all. And Ben Roethlisberger was third as a rookie. Ben Roethlisberger was that third guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and not to start, because, that was back when rookies didn't sign their deals, because that was pre 2011 CBA, which changed everything. So, but that even if it would have been the same thing, that was going to be where Roethlisberger was. I don't know why people were all up in arms if they expected anything different.
It's Bisky business, baby. Bisky business. All right. I could go through a myriad of topics here, but I want to ask you all just an open-ended question. We've all seen the recaps. Dave did his players mentioned article. Dave and I have been putting as many videos, quotes, etc. in our Slack channel. So, Bryan, is there anything in particular, and it can be more than one if you want, that stood out to you after the 3 days of minicamp that you're like, wow, that was kind of interesting, or wow, I didn't expect that? Anything come to mind?
Absolutely not. It just, what really comes to mind is the fact that it's business as usual. There's nothing really going on but a team preparing and a team gelling. So if I'm going to say anything that I noticed is the camaraderie, and especially between the tight ends and Freiermuth and Zach Gentry. There was a lot of camaraderie there, and you can hear all about that tomorrow. And Here We Go, the Steelers show, as we talk about best friends, growth trends, and tight ends. So check that out. But I just love how this team is gelling. It seems very kumbaya right now. And when we're talking about kumbaya, you could talk about Mason Rudolph helping out Kenny Pickett, a guy that might usher him off of this team, but a guy that has no problem helping him out.
Well, how about Mitch Trubisky said in his media session he's going to head down to Florida after minicamp, and he'll stay there until training camp starts. Guess who's going to be joining him for at least a part of that 6 weeks? Kenny Pickett. That's a huge team move for me. Like, if you're going to sit there, and it's one thing to help the rookie when he's there with you, but you're going to invite that guy down to Florida and help him out. That's a great A dude, if you ask me. Dave, what are your thoughts about minicamp? I know you've been paying attention like I have. Is there anything that stood out to you one way or the other?
Well, I'll be honest with you. What stood out to me more than anything came in your Monday morning conversation on Let's Ride with Alan Saunders, and him talking about Kenny Pickett, and just that you could, when you're out there, you can just see that he doesn't have the arm that the other two guys have.
Yeah.
And that he's not right now going to be able to make the throws that the other guys can. And it just kind of put it into perspective exactly what we thought about, the quarterbacks coming into the draft and everything else, and where he is as that, instead he's, maybe it's the moxie, as they were talking about on what Ian's talking about. Maybe that's the factor that Kenny Pickett brings more than anything. But if you didn't listen to that with Jeff's Monday morning conversation on Let's Ride this week, make sure you go back and check that out, because I found that really intriguing. And then I was just trying to kind of pay attention to things as you went. Other than that, it's what we're hearing, what they want us to hear. You can't really determine anything in the trenches because they're out there with football in shorts. But the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway out of everything, is that there was no news of someone going down with an injury, which is what I wanted to avoid more than anything.
For sure. And people showed up. There was no shows. Deontay Johnson showed up. We knew Minkah was going to be there. He's been there every single phase of OTA so far, so I knew he was going to show up, even though he's not. Everyone said this is like breaking news as of Thursday. He didn't do any team drills. He didn't do any 11-on-11. So maybe, just maybe, the guy found an equation that he felt would work that was created by one Trent Jordan Watt last year. You know what? You don't miss a day. You don't miss anything. You show up for everything, and you just say, I'm not going to put myself at risk. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be loyal to the team. We want to get a deal done. And once that deal's done, you got me. You got every piece of me. And there's still fans on social media. They're saying, oh, but is he going to be ready? Are you kidding me? Did you not learn anything from TJ Watt? Because in my opinion, Minkah Fitzpatrick, from a skill standpoint at his position, is equal almost to a TJ Watt. He does not need to be out there as much as everyone else. And so I think he will be just fine. And there are some positive reports. I guess this is a news thing as well. There's some positive reports out there now that the two sides, meaning the Steelers and Minkah Fitzpatrick, are pretty close, and that they're not too far off. So let's hope it doesn't take a TJ Watt move of kicking his agents out of the room and saying, let's sign the deal and let's get it done. Let's hope it doesn't go there. But this is not going to happen now. It's not going to happen in training camp. It'll probably be right for the season, just like they did with Watt, and it'll be fine. People need to relax. Okay. Who has trivia tonight? Anyone? Both of you?
Oh, yeah, I definitely do.
All righty. Let's do Bryan first. Bryan, you ready?
Yes, I am. So I already previewed tomorrow's show. Here we go, the Steelers show with Kevin T. Smith and myself. And we're talking about tight ends, and we're talking about how possibly Pat Freiermuth could be the next Heath Miller, or whether he needs to be the next Heath Miller, or should he be the next Pat Freiermuth. And Freiermuth right now, believe it or not, ranks 11th all time in catches for Steelers tight ends. He's tied at number 11 with Mike Mularkey at 60. We know who number one is. We've already mentioned him. Heath Miller with 592. Could you fellas name the next five after Heath Miller?
Eric Green.
Number 3.
Okay.
Heath Miller.
He's the one from the 70s. He was always crud.
No, this is all time ever, right?
All time for the Steelers.
So this isn't like pre.
There's
some old ones.
Let me preface this with, this is guys listed as a tight end, a TE, in Pro Football Reference.
Okay,
so it's more current.
Okay, because who was the one that was like back in the, oh my goodness, what was it, in the 40s and 50s, was like a Pro Bowler for the Steelers?
Jack Butler.
But it was I'm thinking LB Nickel.
Okay.
Is another one. So you're not talking, because he was listed as an end and a defensive end.
Let's go. Let's go
okay.
In the last 50 since the Super merger. Super
okay.
Bowl.
So there's
good, Dave. If you're
you got to go from the 70s. You got to go with Cunningham.
Benny Cunningham is number 2.
Okay.
Is Bruner on the list?
Bruner is number 4. So
there you go.
It's really funny. 1, 2, 3, and 4, all first rounders.
You said Freiermuth with 60 catches was where?
Tied for 11th.
Jeez.
You said Bruner was where?
Bruner's number 4. So we're looking for 5 and 6.
Jesse
120
James.
catches for Jesse James at number 5.
Nice.
Eric Green.
I already said him.
Yeah.
He's number 3 with 198.
Okay, you said that. Grossman's not up there, is he? Right.
Randy Grossman's number 6 at 119. So good job.
Okay, so there's one more.
We got them all.
You got all 6.
Oh, you got them all? Okay.
So Heath Miller 592, Benny Cunningham 202, Eric Green 198, Mark Bruner 137, Jesse James 120, Randy Grossman 119, the Vanimal Vance McDonald 117, Preston Carpenter 115, John Hilton 108, Eric Ebron 68, Pat Freiermuth and Mike Mularkey 60.
So he only needs 8 catches to pass Ebron.
Yeah.
Man. Good, Dave. You gonna say something?
No. I'm just thinking.
They really don't use the tight end a lot.
Well, no, I mean, look how close he came to Heath Millard's all-time record. 8 touchdowns in a season. I remember had 7, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
And you look at those numbers, and you're thinking, man, that's not a lot of catches.
Yeah,
they're pretty high on that list.
And something very interesting.
I got to put that out there.
Yeah.
Hey, man, we got to throw him out there. Gives us all our great music.
Yep.
Add one more catch to Jesse James.
Yeah. Okay, yes. It doesn't change anything. Now he's 121 instead of 121. And very interesting, Heath Miller had 6 as a rookie, 6 touchdowns as a rookie. And so that means even though Pat Freiermuth did not beat his all-time record of 8 in a season, he broke his rookie record with 7.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dave, what's your trivia?
All right. Well, my trivia is a little bit different. I was just curious about something, so I looked it up. I have some good questions and I have some bad questions. Good questions are ones that are good for Jeff, and bad questions they're more up the alley of bad.
Call them dumb and bad questions.
No, I'm going to call them good and bad questions. I'm not going to insult my fellow podcaster here. Anyway, I think Jeff might know this one.
Oh boy.
What NFL quarterback has thrown for the most yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers? Time
in their career.
Doesn't
matter
what team. All quarterbacks that have, while playing the Steelers,
right,
who has thrown for the most yards?
So, but is it all with one team, or have they bounced around?
I think it might be with one.
I'm gonna say Joe Flacco,
because you are correct. It is Joe Flacco.
Yeah,
you kind of need to go in the division there. Yeah.
Yeah. When you hesitate, you're like, did he? Yeah. You're thinking, did he play against the Steelers when he was at the New York Jets, or any of that?
Some people in the live chat said Tom Brady. Tom Brady's fourth, and in much fewer games, because Joe Flacco was 21 games. Tom Brady is only 12 games. So any idea who the two are in between? Flacco and Brady.
I'm going to take
Palmer. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to say Steve McNair.
Steve McNair is actually 11th in 16 games. You said Carson Palmer. He is 9th in 14 games. Well, first of all, the one that you're missing, one of the two that you're missing is because he's tied for the most games ever played as a quarterback against the Steelers. But it's let's just say this, Jeff, I don't think you were born yet.
Yeah.
Kenny Anderson.
That's Ken Anderson is number 3.
Former Steelers quarterback coach.
And number 2 is actually number 1 in our hearts because he was number 1.
Warren Moon?
Warren Moon.
Wow.
Yes. But now I have the bad question. Here's the bad question.
I'll see y'all later. Take it easy.
No. So this was real. I started looking at who's thrown the most touchdowns against the Steelers. That's Tom Brady. It's actually he's tied with Charlie Connerly from 1948 to 1961 for the Giants. Then I looked at who's thrown the most interceptions against the Steelers. And the most interceptions against the Steelers, that one is Mr. Moon. But I decided to look at pick sixes. And there's a tie for 2 players who have thrown the most pick sixes against the Steelers. Obviously, just for those of you out there, I know you guys know this, meaning it was an interception return for a touchdown. There's 2 of them. I'm going to give you one. The one is Carson Palmer. He's thrown 4.
He's going to be my guess.
That was Jeff's answer. So now Brian's got to come up with the other one. But here's what's interesting about the other one. The other person who has thrown 4 pick sixes against the Steelers did so while never starting a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Never starting a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And if you need a hint, I'll give you a hint of the 4 players who had the pick sixes if you decide you want that hint.
AJ McCarron. Go ahead, give me the players.
Here's the hint. Here are the 4 players who intercepted the
I have a guess, but I want to hear the players.
Ron Johnson,
never mind.
Harvey Clayton, Dwayne Woodruff, and Donnie Shell.
Wrong era. I don't know.
Dan Pastorini. No, he started against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have no idea. He came in as a backup each time.
Yep.
And threw 4 pick six. Come on, Brian, you should know
in
this.
2 games. In back-to-back seasons. Only 2 games, 4 pick sixes.
Jim Plunkett.
The answer would be one. I'm going to say it wrong. I can't read my own handwriting, so I got to bring it there. Turk Schonert.
Turk Schonert of the Bengals.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Number 15.
And in 2 games threw 4 pick sixes.
Beware
one in
the
1983 and one in 1984.
That's a great football name, Turk Schonert.
Beware the Turk.
When I was looking at this stuff and I saw that, and I'm like, wait a second. And he threw 7 interceptions against the Steelers. 4 of them were pick sixes. But it's crazy because he 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions in 10 total games. But from 83 to 89, because he was with Cincinnati 1 year, he was with someone else. I can't remember, but he didn't play the Steelers that year. It was an NFC team. But yeah, in that many games, but the 4 pick sixes came in 2 games.
Wow, that's another level. That's absolutely awesome. I would love to say that I would have known Turk Schonert, but I could have been here. We could have gone nonstop till next Thursday. I would have not gotten Turk Schonert.
Yeah.
My guess, if you would have said someone like William Gay, I would have immediately said Ryan Fitzpatrick, thinking that it was him because he played with all those teams against the Steelers for all those years. But all right. Here we have super chat. $9.99. Tanya McBride gives us, thank you for the tip, by the way, appreciate it. They write, I have a trivia question. In the last 10 years, how many of those years do you think the Steelers swept at least one AFC North team in the last 10 years? So for instance, last season, the Steelers actually swept 2. The Browns and the Ravens. They've actually swept the Ravens the year before. So let's try to figure this out. And Tanya,
the year before that, 2019, didn't they still?
2019 is the last time the Ravens beat the Steelers.
But that was the Ben Roethlisberger-less.
Correct. That was.
Did they beat the Bengals both of those? I know they didn't beat the Browns both of them,
they beat
Ravens.
The Bengals. They came back in the 1 duck game. So I'm actually going to say yes to that.
So I'm thinking it's 10.
I'm going to say all 10.
I'm thinking it's going to be 10 as well.
I hope Tanya's in the live chat to let us know.
There's a lot of people guessing. We got to look for Tanya. I'm looking for Tanya.
I'm going to say there's 1 year that maybe they didn't. So I'm going to go with 9.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my guess.
That's probably safe.
But I'm just thinking,
great question.
Look, you had the Browns back-to-back years only winning 1 game, and that wasn't against the Steelers. So, it wasn't those years. And then between the Browns and the Bengals, one of them was not good in there.
Oh, Tanya says it's 10. The answer is 10. There you
go.
Yeah,
the closest, 2019 was the one I wasn't sure about.
Tanya, you could write us a trivia question anytime.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay for it. You can send us on Twitter or something. We do appreciate the tip, though. We do appreciate the tip. Absolutely. A lot of people ask where the money goes. The money goes back into the system. We'll put it that way. Like, we just ordered, I think, 4 of our podcasters new microphones, PFF accounts. Yes, Brian is showing his microphone. You see mine, you see Dave's. The PFF accounts. What are the StreamYard account, which allows us to stream live on YouTube. It gets paid by that money. So if you're wondering, like, what happens to the money, there you go. All right, let's do some final thoughts here. Brian, you're up. Go ahead.
All right, I want to talk celebrity birthdays today. And, we already talked about Marty McFly. Happy 60th birthday to Michael J. Fox. Johnny Depp, who's been in the news a lot, is 58 today. Natalie Portman is 40. Zolo Maraduena, if you don't know who that is, he's on my favorite show. He's 20. He's on Cobra Kai. So those are some pretty big names with birthdays today. Another birthday is a man that we all know here at BTSC, by Blue Check Beck. So happy birthday to Blue Check. But of all those people that I mentioned, as big names as they are, I want to bring up another birthday. and it is the most important woman in my world, and it's my wife, Jennifer. Jennifer turns. I'm going to go ahead and be safe and not give you her age, but she doesn't. She does not look 46. I will tell you that.
Oh,
but
he did it. He
but
did it.
the one thing that I will say is, yeah, I joke all the time about the starter wife, and for 16 years, actually 15 years of marriage, but 16 years of knowing her, this woman has made me a father. She has taken a guy that has felt like an outcast his entire life and made him feel like the most important person in the world. So happy birthday. I love you for lots and lots of evers. To my favorite person in the world, Jennifer Louise Phillips Davis. Thank you for loving me.
Happy birthday, Jenny.
Today.
Okay.
Today.
Excellent. Today. Happy birthday. All right, Dave, follow it up.
Well, if we're going to talk birthdays, we're going to talk wives, then man, Bryan, what's happening is our wives have the perfect bookend of the horrible part of the NFL season. Because your wife's birthday is today, the last day of Steelers mandatory minicamp, when my wife's birthday is on July 26th, when the Steelers will be reporting to St. Vincent College in Latrobe. So I can't wait for my wife's birthday because I am ready to get this part of the season past us. I mean, I don't want to wish away my entire summer. We don't want to do that. We're going to enjoy this time. I mean, Jeff is like, he's like, summer break, woohoo. So we don't want to wish it all away, but I really love, I don't even know why I said like, I love the Pittsburgh Steelers and watching them play football. I do. And we're about ready to hit the time where we're not going to have anything happening. So I'm looking forward to that. So enjoy yourself during this time. Enjoy yourself during these 6 weeks until the Steelers come back. You know, go on vacation like things going on. But don't go away from behind the steel curtain because we're still going to be here with every podcast, every article, everything that we do. Otherwise, we're still going to be coming at you because all we're going to be doing is what we feel like we've continued to do, and that is we are building the anticipation for the season. I am so excited about this season because even where the Steelers have question marks about things going into this season, I look at that and I'm like, but is it worse than last year? You know, you look at the defensive line. Is it worse than last year? You look at the inside linebacker. Oh, there's questions there, but is it worse than last year? So if you're talking about improving things and how things were last year, I'm really excited to see what's going to bring in 2022.
Well said. I want to do a really quick shout out here. So this person, he's one of my Ride or Die crew. That's one of my loyal listeners on my Let's Ride podcast, Cheeseball10.
Yeah, I saw this.
He tagged Dave. I think he tagged Bryan as well. It was in his senior yearbook. There was the top listened podcast of that class, and Behind the Steel Curtain was one of them. And he sent that to us, and I said, "Oh, what's the school? We'll give you a shout out." I gave him a shout out of my heart to heart on my Friday Let's Ride. But to all those kids at FD Roosevelt High School in Hyde Park, New York, the class of 2022, congratulations on your graduation.
And we will always be engraved in your yearbook.
Yes. Yes. Somewhere 50 years down the road, someone's going to say, what the hell is Behind the Steel Curtain? Well, we were here at that time, so there you go. All right, Dave, why don't you go ahead and send us out?
Hey.
We'll see you next week for another Steelers preview. Take it easy.